Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Time to go to the movies with Gail Hall. She's been through the Shoreline Cinema Review and she's in our studio this morning. Morning, Gail.
Good morning, Nigel.
You've seen a film, Finding Your Feet. I have trouble finding mine most days. Is it a comedy film?
Yes, it is, Nigel.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
It's a real go-to comedy. Now,
yes.
I went down yesterday,
yes.
First session of the day, 10:15.
Oh, right.
And I thought to myself, there probably won't be many people here.
Yep.
And I walked in and I got the last seat.
Wow.
So it was absolutely booked out. Great to see.
Right.
Yeah.
What was yesterday? Thursday?
Yesterday was Thursday.
Oh,
yeah,
people might have
10:15.
Yeah.
Yep.
People wanted to get out after the weather.
Oh, well, go to the movies, go out somewhere for lunch.
Yeah. That's a nice
So anyway,
place to go.
Finding Your Feet.
Yep.
Imelda Staunton plays the lovely Lady Sandra Abbott.
Right.
Married to Mike for 40 years, and he's a retired chief constable, and they're having their retirement party. And the movie, the camera zooms in on this party at a stately home, very posh, you know. And of course, you know, all the guests there drinking champagne and all that. And Sandra starts to sort of move about the house and sees this closed door and thinks, just go in and have a look there. For whatever reason, she might have heard a noise. And there was her lovely husband, Mike, with 40 years, having a lovely clutch together with Sandra's best friend.
Right.
Well, you can imagine that end the night. Yes, and in the ensuing confrontation, which all the guests heard, party over. Right. And Sandra packs her bags and then makes the journey to see her sister.
Yes.
And Elizabeth, Biff as she calls her, because when she was little she couldn't say Elizabeth, so she called her Biff.
Oh, right.
And this is played by Celia Imrie, and honestly these two together are magic.
Right.
They are really, really great. Well, Biff lives in is a bit bohemian, and she lives in a council dwelling. And of course, this is a bit of a step downwards for our Sandra, who, you know, has always been used to having an orderly house. And Biff's dwelling is like a second-hand shop. You know, it's very untidy, things hanging everywhere, but she's there and spills her heart out to Biff about what has happened.
What has gone on.
Yeah. Yep. And in the ensuing weeks, of course, Biff tries to get her involved in her community, which, you know, she's got some very sort of strange friends, but cycling, swimming, and even encourages her to come along to a community dance group. And she's not very happy about doing this, but she thought, in the end, I better do something. And being an ex-dancer from way back, she goes along to this dance group and very reluctantly joins in. And this where Timothy Spall enters. And he's called Charlie in the movie. And I don't know whether your listeners will remember Timothy Spall, but he was in the movie Turner, and he was an artist, and he was brilliant, absolutely. And of course we've got the lovely Jackie, Joanna Lumley, who throws in some amazing one-liners during this movie. And they start to sort of do this dance, instructed by the young dance teacher. They're going to do a flash mob dance. And of course, over the ensuing weeks, Sandra's getting quite involved in this, and they do this flash mob dance, and they are seen because it goes on social media, and everybody sees these more mature people sort of dancing, and they get picked up by an event organiser who wants them to take it to Rome. Right. So this is all very exciting for the group. Now, this movie reminds me a lot of the Marigold Hotel, the exotic Marigold Hotel movies. Very sort of similar type thing. And anyway, they do go off to Rome, and they do this concert, and it's very successful. And of course, then they come back to their lives in London, and she goes back to her sister. And in the interim, I think the affair is all over with Mike, her husband of 40 years, and they had one daughter and she's got a grandson. And of course he wants her back. And she's thinking about this, but her and Charlie, Timothy Spall, are just getting a little bit closer. And Charlie's wife has been in a in a home for 5 years with dementia, and he loves her dearly and goes to see her often, and had to sell his house, and he bought a houseboat. So he's a little bit out of there. He lives on this houseboat, and they're sort of getting a bit closer, and she's sort of forgetting about what happened to her in the months previous. But I'm not sure whether I want to go too much into the movie in that respect, because I think you should go and see it.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I think I've made the point here saying that these people in the show, more mature actors, have really gelled together, and it just makes it so good to see more mature people all involved in this movie. Now, I want to make a comment here that you might actually need a tissue.
All right.
Won't say why,
no.
But
just take a tissue.
Just take a tissue, because
right.
There's moments, some beautiful moments in this movie that might hit you in the heart.
Right.
Yes, and I want to just also mention too, Nigel, that Imelda and her husband actually came to New Zealand, I read this, 2 years ago, and thought our country was absolutely breathtaking, and the food just out of this world.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So they came and did a visit.
Yes.
And watching the movie and knowing that, it sort of had a little bit of a special meaning, knowing that she'd been
You'd
here to the
endeared
country.
themselves
Yeah.
to it.
But this movie, I think people should see it, and honestly, if they don't book, they're not going to get a seat.
Right.
Because it's on for different viewings during the week, and right up until the 28th on the latest program at Shoreline.
Excellent. Finding Your Feet. Sounds a great film. I think I must have to go and see it.
Oh, it is
Good on
great.
you.
It is great. And coming up, Nigel, is Mercy, The Mercy. And this is about the solo voyage in 1968. This is based on a true story as well. And I get to review this, and I enjoy reviewing true stories based on true, about the solo yachtsman around the world, 1968, the intrigue and mystery of that
Right.
event.
When's that coming up?
That is coming up on March the 8th.
Right.
And a little way away yet, but it's only really a couple of weeks away.
It is
so
indeed. You'll be back to review that.
Yeah, keep an eye out for that. And yes, and I'll be back then.
Thanks, Gail. Have a good trip back to Otakai.
Thank you.
That's Gail Hall with her review of the film. Sounds very interesting. Finding Your Feet.
106.3 Beach FM.